The world knew Liam Carter as a man who had it all. His name alone commanded attention, whispered in exclusive clubs, printed across business magazines, envied by rivals. The sprawling mansions, the rarest cars gleaming under marble driveways, and a billion-dollar empire built with his own two hands. All of it formed an empire so magnificent that few dared to even dream it. But behind the dazzling headlines and glossy photographs lived a man trapped in a silent, invisible prison. Liam Carter, 32, with sapphire eyes that once sparkled with hope, had not loved, truly loved, in 10 long, brutal years. It hadn't always been this way. A decade ago, he believed in forever. He believed love could weather storms, heal wounds, and conquer the darkness. But all those illusions shattered the night he found Marissa, the woman he planned to marry, in the arms of his trusted best friend. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a massacre of everything good he believed about the world. Since then, Liam had perfected the art of loneliness. Cold business meetings replaced Sunday brunches. One-night social events filled the void where family gatherings used to be. He buried his heart under layers of iron, building walls too high, too thick for anyone to even touch. At night, his penthouse echoed with silence. No laughter, no whispered goodnights. Only the endless tick of the clock and the hollow ache of dreams abandoned. His family tried, of course. His mother, growing older, pleaded with misty eyes for him to give love another chance. Friends invited him to yacht parties, charity balls, endless parades of beautiful women flaunting designer smiles. But Liam stood apart, detached, unmoved. He believed love was a fool's gamble, until Tessa Carter, Liam's fiercely loyal, mischievous younger sister, had always been the stubborn one. She hated seeing her brother's soul shrivel in the shadows. So without telling him, she did something bold, something that would soon change everything. One late autumn evening, after yet another charity gala Liam attended purely out of obligation, he returned home to find an envelope on his kitchen counter. Elegant, thick paper, sealed with gold wax. Curious and mildly annoyed, he opened it. Inside was a sleek invitation card from Elysian Matches, an elite, ultra-private matchmaking agency. Only the wealthiest, most reclusive figures even knew of its existence, and somehow someone had submitted his profile, signed, sealed, approved, for an upcoming blind date event. At first, Liam laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Him? On a blind date? Absurd. He was ready to toss the invitation into the fireplace when Tessa burst into the room, her brown eyes wide with excitement and mischief. "Don't be mad," she said, hands raised in surrender. "But you need this." Liam's jaw clenched. "Tessa, you're rotting away, Liam," she interrupted fiercely. "You're living, but you're not alive. You built an empire, yes. But what good is a kingdom if the king sits alone on a cold, empty throne?" Her words cut deeper than he cared to admit. He glared at the invitation again, the golden letters shimmering under the soft light. "You signed me up behind my back," he muttered darkly. Tessa grinned, unapologetic. "You're welcome." For the first time in years, something, a flicker, a whisper of curiosity, stirred within him. It terrified him more than he'd ever admit. Could he risk opening his heart again? Could he risk the pain, the betrayal, the devastation, or worse? What if he found nothing at all? What if he was simply too broken? The date was set for the following Friday at a private restaurant downtown. Only first names would be exchanged. No businesses, no last names. Just two people, two souls, stripped of everything the world said they were. The idea gnawed at him all week. He could easily back out. He had every excuse ready. Business trip, urgent meeting, a million fabricated emergencies. But when Friday night rolled around, Liam found himself standing before his mirror, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored navy jacket, staring at a reflection he barely recognized. The blue eyes that once sparkled were wary now, hardened. But somewhere, deep beneath the ice, a fragile hope blinked awake. Maybe, just maybe, Tessa was right. Maybe it was time to leave the lonely throne behind. With a deep, shuddering breath, Liam grabbed his keys, stepped into the elevator, and descended into a night that would change his life forever. The restaurant looked like something out of a dream. Bathed in the warm glow of soft golden lights, it exuded a timeless elegance. Velvet curtains, crystal chandeliers, polished mahogany tables. The air was thick with the intoxicating scent of fresh roses, flickering candles, and the faintest notes of aged wine. It was romantic, intimate, terrifying. Liam Carter adjusted the cuff of his jacket again, feeling the unfamiliar thud of his own heart against his ribs. He hadn't been this nervous since he pitched his first $1 million investment. Sitting alone in a private booth tucked into the far corner, he glanced at the entrance for what must have been the 100th time. He almost didn't come. At least half a dozen times that afternoon, he had hovered over his phone, ready to call and cancel. Business deals, meetings, emergencies. He could have fabricated any excuse. But something deeper than logic had kept him coming. Maybe it was Tessa's words echoing in his mind. Maybe it was the gnawing loneliness he couldn't admit to himself anymore. Maybe it was hope. He tapped his fingers lightly against the table, heart hammering louder than the soft piano music playing in the background. Then she walked in. Emery Collins. She wasn't what he expected. She was so much more. A simple sapphire dress clung gracefully to her curves, understated yet devastatingly elegant. Her blonde hair spilled down her back in soft waves, catching the light like spun gold. But it was her eyes that undid him. Vivid, arresting green, sparkling with life, laughter, and secrets she hadn't told anyone yet. For a split second, Liam forgot how to breathe. The noise of the restaurant dulled, blurred, until all he could hear was the thudding of his own heartbeat. He watched her nervously scan the room, clutching a small clutch bag in her hand. She looked out of place among the glittering crowd of polished, picture-perfect socialites. And yet, she was the only real thing in the room. Emery's heart raced wildly in her chest. She had almost canceled this date a dozen times. Blind dates weren't for women like her, women who worked hard, paid their own bills, lived in tiny apartments with peeling paint and dreams too big for their budgets. Women who knew better than to expect fairy tales. But her best friend Lila had insisted. "Take a chance," Lila had said. "You never know who you're about to meet." And now, standing here, feeling 1,000 eyes on her, Emery wondered if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake. When her gaze locked onto Liam's across the room, something electric, something alive sparked in the air between them. He wasn't smiling like the others. He wasn't putting on a show. He just looked at her, as if she was the only person that mattered. With trembling hands, Emery walked toward him, each step feeling heavier than the last. Liam stood up automatically, pushing his chair back, his tall frame towering over the table, the soft lights catching the sharp angles of his jawline and the surprising vulnerability in his blue eyes. "Emery?" he asked, his voice lower, rougher than he intended. She nodded, smiling shyly. "Liam." He offered his hand. When her fingers slid into his, a jolt of warmth rushed up his arm, rattling the walls he'd built around his heart. He pulled her chair out, motioning for her to sit, and then lowered himself back into his own seat, never taking his eyes off her. For a moment, neither spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was charged, tense in the most breathtaking way. Finally, Liam chuckled, a real, honest sound that caught Emery off guard. "I'll admit," he said, leaning in conspiratorially, "I haven't done this in a very long time." Emery laughed softly, a melodic sound that made something tighten and then melt inside him. "Me neither," she confessed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Honestly, I almost didn't come." Liam arched a brow. "What changed your mind?" She looked at him, really looked, and said softly, "I guess I didn't want to live scared anymore." For a man who had built his entire life behind walls, her words hit like a punch to the gut. Neither of them realized they were leaning closer across the table. Conversation flowed more easily than either expected. They spoke of childhood dreams, favorite books, ridiculous fears. Liam found himself laughing more in that 1 hour than he had in the past 5 years combined. Emery was witty, intelligent, passionate. She spoke of life with a fire that burned through her modesty. But Liam sensed the shadows behind her smiles too. wounds she wasn't ready to share. He understood. He carried his own. As the evening wore on, the noise of the world faded completely. It was just the two of them, two souls, battered but breathing, finding each other across a battlefield of broken dreams. For the first time in 10 years, Liam Carter smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and cracked open a part of him he thought was dead. And somewhere deep inside, an undeniable, terrifying thought whispered, "This could be it. This stranger. This woman with laughter in her eyes and armor around her heart. She could be the one to change everything, if he was brave enough to let her." The hours slipped away like grains of sand between trembling fingers. Conversation flowed between Liam and Emery so effortlessly, it was as if the universe had bent time just for them. They spoke of favorite childhood books, secret dreams they'd never voiced aloud, the kind of fears that people usually tucked away into dark corners, never daring to share. Liam learned Emery loved painting at dawn, when the world was still asleep. He learned she dreamed of opening a tiny art studio one day, a place filled with mismatched chairs and wildflowers on the windowsills. And Emery learned that Liam, despite all his success, still woke up some nights feeling like the lonely boy who had once watched his parents fight more than they loved. They laughed, they listened, they lingered in the pauses like old souls rediscovering each other. But then, like a sudden gust of cold air through an open door, the past slithered in. It started innocently enough. They were swapping funny stories about past jobs. Emery mentioned working for a luxury fashion company early in her career, juggling unpaid overtime and impossible demands. Liam's casual curiosity turned sharp when she named it. Devon and Ray. His chest tightened, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Devon and Ray. The very company his ex-girlfriend, Madeline Ray, had co-owned. The very woman who had once shattered Liam's trust so viciously he hadn't dared to love again. Suddenly, the table between him and Emery felt like a chasm. Was it a coincidence? Or had fate sent a storm disguised as a dream? Liam masked his spiraling thoughts with a tight smile, but doubt gnawed at him like a wolf at the door. Was this all some cruel joke? Was Emery somehow connected to the betrayal that had broken him 10 years ago? He barely heard her next words, something about leaving the company because it was too toxic. He was too busy fighting old ghosts rising from their graves. Meanwhile, across the table, Emery was battling her own demons. She saw the flicker of hesitation in Liam's eyes and panicked silently. Was she being too open? Too honest? Would he think less of her because she hadn't stayed on some prestigious career path? Her last relationship had ended brutally. A man who charmed his way into her heart, only to exploit her kindness for his own selfish climb. He had stolen not just her money, but her faith in love itself. And now, sitting across from Liam Carter, this man who saw her and still smiled, she realized how terrified she was of trusting again. As the clock struck midnight, the spell between them grew fragile, delicate. The waiter discreetly dropped the check, and Liam reached for it mechanically, mind spinning with 1,000 unspoken questions. Should he ask her about Madeline? Should he pry open the past tonight, right here, and shatter whatever delicate magic they had built? Or should he let tonight be just tonight? Emery tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her smile suddenly shy, almost nervous. She pulled something small from her purse, a neatly folded piece of paper. She stumbled over her words, cheeks turning a delicate pink. I wanted to give you this before we leave. Liam took the note with slow, almost reverent hands, his pulse pounding in his ears. When he unfolded it, his chest tightened painfully. In looping, earnest handwriting, the words read, I haven't smiled like this in years, thank you. Simple, raw, real. It hit him harder than any grand confession ever could. She wasn't playing games. She wasn't part of some twisted scheme. She was just a woman, broken, brave, and offering him a piece of her guarded heart. For the first time in years, Liam didn't care what the past whispered. He cared about this moment, about Emery. He stood up slowly, tucking the note carefully into his jacket pocket like a treasure. Emery, he said, voice low and earnest, would you like to meet again? Her breath caught. For a heartbeat she hesitated, old scars flashing in her eyes. Then she smiled, that same shy, radiant smile that had wrecked him the moment she walked through the restaurant door. "I'd like that," she whispered. As they walked out into the cool night, side by side but not yet touching, both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Too much past, too many fears. But for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, hope shimmered between them, fragile but fiercely alive, and neither was willing to let go. Not this time. The days following their first date had felt like stepping into a dream neither of them wanted to wake from. Liam Carter and Emery Collins fell into a rhythm so natural it scared them both. Morning texts that made them smile before the sun rose. Late-night calls where words faded into comfortable silences. Weekend coffee dates that turned into strolls through quiet parks, hands brushing, hearts racing. For the first time in years, Liam felt the heavy armor around his heart crack and fall away, piece by cautious piece. He laughed without measuring it. He dreamed without doubting it. And Emery? She let herself believe that maybe, not all men wore masks. Maybe love wasn't a weapon, but a refuge. She painted again. She sang in the shower again. She woke up eager to see what another day with Liam might bring. Their connection was electric, intimate, tender, a fire that warmed, not burned, but happiness, as fate often warns, rarely comes unchallenged. The first sign of trouble came on a brittle Thursday afternoon. Liam received a call he almost didn't answer, but the name flashing across the screen made his blood run cold. Victoria Hale, his ex, the woman whose betrayal a decade ago had turned him into stone. He debated letting it ring out, letting the past stay buried, but some dark instinct made him answer. Victoria's voice was as smooth and venomous as he remembered. "So," she drawled, mock sweetness coating every word, "I hear you found a new plaything. Another wide-eyed fool chasing your fortune?" Liam stiffened. "You're not worth my time, Victoria," he bit out, but she only laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "You think she's different?" she taunted. "You think she's not using you too? Wake up, Liam. Open your pretty blue eyes. She's a gold digger like the rest. Maybe worse." He ended the call, jaw tight, heart hammering in his chest. He told himself not to listen. Told himself Emery was nothing like Victoria. But the poison had already been planted, and Victoria wasn't done. The next morning, headlines exploded like grenades across social media and newsstands. Billionaire's new flame, angel or opportunist. Emery Collins, the secret past behind Liam Carter's mystery woman. Lies, half-truths, old photos twisted out of context, anonymous sources hinting at ambition and manipulation. The media, ravenous as ever, tore into Emery's life without mercy. By noon, Emery's phone was flooded with cruel messages, her job offers mysteriously drying up, her reputation dragged through the mud. She tried to laugh it off with Liam at first, brushing her hair behind her ear and saying lightly, "Guess I'm famous now." But she saw it, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes, the way his hand tightened around his glass during dinner, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. The seed Victoria had planted was growing, feeding on Liam's old wounds, and it was poisoning everything. One rainy evening, as thunder growled low over the city, it all came crashing down. They met at Liam's penthouse, the floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting a world blurred by storm. Emery arrived soaked despite her umbrella, her blonde hair clinging to her cheeks, mascara smudged from the tears she hadn't meant to shed. Liam barely looked at her. Instead, he shoved a stack of printed headlines across the coffee table, his jaw clenched tight. "Tell me it's all lies," he said, voice low, almost pleading. Emery stared at the papers, then at him. Something inside her cracked, not from guilt, but from heartbreak. "You think I'm after your money?" she asked, voice trembling. Liam didn't answer right away, didn't rush to reassure her. And that silence, oh, that devastating silence, was louder than any accusation. "I thought you knew me," she whispered. "I do," he said quickly. I I want to. It's just, there's so much I don't know, Emery. So much you haven't told me." Her heart shattered piece by piece. "I'm not Madeline," she said fiercely. "I'm not Victoria. I'm not anyone from your past, Liam. I'm just me." But maybe, she continued, voice breaking, there's no room in your heart for someone new. Maybe you're still living with your ghosts. Tears welled in her bright green eyes, glistening like shattered emeralds. I trusted you, she said hoarsely. I let myself believe in you. A beat of silence, a heartbeat too late, and then Emery turned on trembling legs, grabbed her coat, and walked to the door. Liam stood frozen, rooted to the spot, the words he should have said strangling in his throat. She paused once, hand on the doorknob, as if hoping, begging, for him to stop her, to fight for her. But no sound came from him, nothing. And so she opened the door, stepped into the raging storm, and disappeared from his life, leaving Liam staring after her, colder, emptier, and lonelier than he had been in 10 long years. Liam Carter's world had always been run by logic, by the cold, calculated decisions that came with being a billionaire. But for the first time in years, nothing made sense. No amount of numbers, no meetings or business deals could push away the haunting image of Emery Collins. Days bled into nights, and all he could do was work, poring over contracts, closing deals, his mind unwilling to rest. But despite the flurry of activity, she was there, in every thought, in every empty space. Her laughter, her smile, the way she made him feel like he mattered again. It was all slipping away, and the weight of it crushed him. Then on the third day of his self-imposed exile to work, he stumbled upon something that shattered him to his core. A simple email notification, a job offer he hadn't seen coming. It was from one of the top design firms in the world, a global giant in the industry. The opportunity was incredible, more money than anyone could dream of. But the person who had rejected it? Emery Collins. Liam stared at the screen, heart hammering in his chest. The offer had been pulled from her inbox, just days after their argument. He clicked on the file, reading through the email. The firm had reached out to her after she'd impressed their executives with her design concepts. But Emery had turned it down with one sentence that tore Liam apart. I'm building my own dream, not someone else's. She didn't want the money. She didn't want the fame. She only wanted her small startup, her own vision of what the world could be. The same vision she'd spoken of so passionately on their first date. It wasn't about him. It never had been. It was about her. Liam sat back in his chair, stunned. Guilt began to consume him, squeezing his chest until he couldn't breathe. All this time he had doubted her. He had listened to whispers. He had let his past shape his present, believing every accusation that had been hurled at her. And in doing so, he had become the very man he promised never to be. The one who mistrusted love, the one who questioned everything without understanding the heart of the matter. Emery had shown him tenderness, vulnerability. She had built a bridge between them, and he had burned it down, brick by brick. The weight of his mistakes felt suffocating, like a vice slowly tightening around him. He didn't care about the empire anymore. He didn't care about the fortune. What mattered was her, and he was losing her. Driven by an urgency he couldn't ignore, Liam made a decision. He would fix this. He would find her. He would make it right. He threw on his coat and rushed out of his office, his mind focused solely on one thing: Emery. Every second without her felt like an eternity. His first stop was her design studio, the small, quaint space that had been her sanctuary. When he arrived, the sight that met him broke him further. The glass windows were shattered, the door half hanging on its hinges. The interior was in disarray, papers torn, furniture overturned, walls scratched with angry marks. It looked like a war zone, and Liam knew exactly who had done it. Victoria. The memory of his ex's cold, vindictive smile flashed in his mind. She was behind this. No one else could hate Emery this much. She was trying to push Emery out, destroying everything she had worked for. Liam felt his blood boil with rage, but there was no time for anger, only regret. Only the need to find Emery before it was too late. He rushed out of the studio, desperate for answers, asking anyone on the street if they had seen her. When he finally tracked down her small apartment, he was told she'd already packed a few bags and left earlier that morning. The air felt heavy with finality. She was leaving town. She was leaving him. He wouldn't let her go. Not like this. Not without hearing the truth from her lips. As he stood at her apartment building, adrenaline coursing through his veins, he knew what he had to do. The only way to prove his love, to prove that everything he felt was real, was to show her. Show her that he believed in her, in what they had, and in the future they could still share. He would follow her. With determination, he pulled out his phone and booked the next flight to the destination he had learned she was heading to, a small town in the mountains where she had dreamed of setting up her new life. As the plane lifted off, Liam closed his eyes, his mind racing. He thought of the way she had looked at him that night, the pain in her eyes when she walked away. He thought of the note she had left him on their first date, the one that still lay hidden in his desk, carefully folded. "I haven't smiled like this in years. Thank you," he would be the reason, she smiled again. And he wasn't going to stop until he had her back. The rain hammered against the windshield like a relentless drumbeat, a storm mirroring Liam's turbulent emotions. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. But there was no turning back now. He couldn't lose her, not after everything. The city lights blurred as he drove through the downpour, his mind focused only on one thing. Emery. She was leaving. He could feel it, the emptiness that would swallow him whole if she slipped away from his life forever. When he finally arrived at the old train station, he saw her, standing there, suitcase in hand, looking like a broken angel against the dark sky. She didn't even glance at him, her back turned, shoulders hunched in defeat. He didn't care about the storm soaking him to the bone. All that mattered was getting to her. "Emery!" Liam called, running toward her with all the strength his heart could muster. The rain soaked through his clothes, but he didn't stop. She looked at him for the first time, her green eyes cold and distant. But something flickered. Maybe hope, maybe pain. He couldn't tell. Without a word, he dropped to his knees before her, ignoring the startled gasps of bystanders, the flashing cameras that captured every moment, the whispers swirling in the air. Nothing mattered but the woman standing before him. His hands shook as he pulled a small velvet box from his coat pocket, the weight of it symbolizing everything he had to lose. Inside wasn't a diamond ring, but a locket, a simple gold one, the kind his mother had once told him should only be given to the woman who would hold his heart forever. His mother's voice echoed in his memory, reminding him of love's true value. "I was lost, Emery," he choked, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't just make me smile. You made me believe again. Please don't leave me. Be my forever." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Emery's hands trembled as tears streaked down her face. Her suitcase slipped from her grip, forgotten. With trembling fingers, she reached down to him, pulling him up to his feet. Her voice was barely a whisper as she met his eyes. "Only if you promise me never to doubt our love again." Liam nodded, his heart pounding in his chest, and without hesitation, he kissed her. Not just with his lips, but with his soul. An apology, a promise, and the declaration of a love he would never let go. The storm raged around them, but in that kiss, everything else faded. All that was left was them, together. Months had passed since that stormy night, and Liam and Emery's love had only grown stronger. Now, standing on the edge of the world, they were far away from the chaos and the judgments that had once threatened to tear them apart. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly before them, waves crashing with a steady rhythm, as if nature itself was bearing witness to their promise. There were no cameras, no entourage, just the two of them and the raw, real love they had built from the wreckage of their past. Liam had never imagined this moment would come. After everything, after the betrayal, the loneliness, the pain, he thought happiness was a dream that would forever remain out of reach. But here he stood, holding the woman who had healed the pieces of his soul. They exchanged vows, simple words but powerful ones, stitched together from the broken parts of their hearts. Each vow felt like a rebirth, a chance to start over, to trust again. "I used to think I had everything," Liam whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "but I didn't know what it meant to truly live until I met you." Emery smiled softly, her eyes glistening with tears. And I never knew what love could be until I found you, she replied, her voice steady and full of conviction. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky ablaze with shades of fire and gold, Liam gently cupped her face. After 10 years of loneliness, I finally found home. In you. In that moment, time stood still. Liam kissed her, a kiss full of promises, of dreams, and of a love that was unbreakable. For the first time in a decade, he truly lived. And with Emery by his side, he knew he would never be lonely again.